when you're fundraising for a startup, now I'm talking about really early stage type of startups that we have invested in with Katapult Ocean. Of course, you want to show the best, and you want to sell, your company and the team and all of that, and that's great. You should definitely do that, but you have to be at the same time be honest and transparent, because no one expects that a small early stage company is perfect. So that looks almost too suspicious, right? So I think it's good to also be very open about what you need support on. And if those areas matches what these investors can support you on, then it's really very interesting for the investors, because they say that then they see that, wow, I can add value, and that's exciting.
Bonjour, and welcome to Mission First, the podcast to get inspired and to learn from successful entrepreneurs who are building a sustainable future for our planet and its people. I am Gilles Toussaint, your host and the founder of GT Impact, a growth and digital marketing agency working only with companies making a positive difference in this world. Growing a company that aims at having a sustainable impact is not easy. That's why I created Mission First. In each episode, I interview one entrepreneur who has a sustainable mission and who has recently gone through the difficult first years successfully. Together, we discuss their challenges and what they have learned on the way. We go into detail with a specific focus on company culture, leadership, financing, growth, and business strategy. That way, you'll learn hands-on tips on how to build a better future and a successful company too. I always had a passion for the sea and the ocean, so today I'm really excited to interview Maren Hjorth. Maren is one of the co-founders of Katapult Ocean, which invests and supports startups with a positive impact on our ocean. They have a 3-month accelerator program. They have already invested in 23 startups, between 150 to 300,000 euros per startup. They've built a global ecosystem of partners and more than 100 mentors to support these startups. So I'm really glad and excited to have the chance to talk to her today. Maren, thank you very much for being here today. How are you?
Thank you for inviting me, Gil. I'm fine. Great to be here to share some of my experiences. Hopefully it's interesting for your listeners to learn more about ocean impact technologies and investment opportunities in this space.
I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. First question, which person, can be a family or celebrity or anyone has inspired you to become an entrepreneur?
3 years ago, soon 3 years ago, I started Katapult Ocean together with the 3 other co-founders, and I led that and built that until this spring. And during those years, I think what has inspired me most are the founders we've invested in. People who've had great careers elsewhere, and that leave all that behind to start something new from scratch. Extremely passionate people, clever people who just put everything they have into all the eggs into one basket to build a successful company. I think working with those founders is what has really inspired me a lot. In addition, there are of course the philanthropists of the world, and it's of course always inspirational to listen to Al Gore talking about impact investment as the most, the best business case and best investment opportunity of our time. So those type of people, of course. And then being a woman in the kind of finance and investment space, I think all other, women who really made it in this space are also a great inspiration.
Great. So you are one of the co-founders of Katapult Ocean. Can you explain us a bit what is your mission and the mission of Katapult Ocean if it's different?
Yes, the Katapult ecosystem was started by a group of people very passionate about impact investing and exponential technologies several years ago. And together with this group, I founded Katapult Ocean. And the vision, start with that, the vision for Katapult Ocean is a thriving ocean in harmony with economic development. So really that we can use the ocean to provide food, sustainable energy, experiences, green transportation. There's a lot of opportunities in the ocean. At the same time as the fact that we're really reliant upon a healthy ocean to provide us those services. So that's kind of the vision for Katapult Ocean. And the mission for Katapult Ocean was to invest in leading impact ocean startups globally and support them and build a broad ecosystem to kind of accelerate this quite nascent part of the startup ecosystem. And we did that by really building a global ecosystem of mentors, as you mentioned, partners, the corporate players. We worked a lot with the intersection between the startups and the established industry players to push the established ones to work with startups, to be pilot customers, to invest and to support this next generation of entrepreneurs in this space.
And you told me that your ambition was you wanted to change how the VC world works. What do you mean by that?
I think that's more for kind of my current project. So I just started Katapult Ocean some years ago, built that. I've stepped aside as CEO in Katapult Ocean this spring. We got a great guy on board to lead that forward with the team. And I am currently building Fynd Ocean Ventures. And the ambition for Fynd is to invest in significantly later stage ventures in the ocean space, in the growth phase. And for Fynd, it is really to build what we call a VC 2.0.1. So to take the best of the private equity approach in being very focused on value creation and potential exits, and take that to the growth phase companies. So and be that strategic lead investor that really knows the space and can work hands-on with the companies and everything from business development to making more lean processes and look at manufacturing JVs and everything that has to be looked upon in those companies. So that's what I mean by kind of VC 2.0. So that's what we're targeting to do with Fynd Ocean Ventures. If we move back to Katapult Ocean, I think that's also kind of a novel way of supporting these type of companies at the very early stage. So with Katapult Ocean, we have invested into a lot of early stage pre-seed, seed companies. And the model for Katapult Ocean is a 3-month accelerator program where we bring these companies to Norway to get them immersed into the strong ecosystem we have here. Katapult Ocean just launched their third wave of startups, or they're doing it these weeks. And today, of course, it's a virtual program, which is also working very well. So this is also a quite different way of doing it to support early stage startups, extremely hands-on for a shorter period of time.
Just to make sure, your company is a for-profit company, I guess.
Yes, both. So Katapult Ocean, which is kind of my old company where I'm still a bit involved, and then Fynd Ocean Ventures. It's for-profit, definitely, but with an impact lens. So we invest into companies that combine competitive financial returns with positive impact. And I think the ocean space is just the perfect example of this. I can mention a couple of examples. We need to feed the growing population. There are going to be 10 billion people on the planet the next decades in need of food. And we know that protein from the ocean is more healthy, has less carbon footprint, and if we do it in a sustainable way, we are able to produce more from the ocean. So, that is, of course, a big demand. At the same time, if we do it in the right way, using new technologies, we can also do it in a sustainable way that is good for the planet. So really combining profit and impact.
So I'd like to take a step back and to put myself and ourselves in your shoes when you started the company. So, talking about the first steps of the company creation, how does the story start? What's the trigger that makes you decide to start Katapult Ocean?
For me personally, it started with I wanted to build something. I had previously been 10 years plus part of bigger companies like McKinsey, like the Wilhelmsen Group, which is a big shipping company, and Orkla, a big fast moving consumer goods company here in Norway, or leading one in the Nordics. And I was a bit tired of all the bureaucracy and being, just having kind of responsibility for kind of my part. But I really want to build something and drive something at my pace. So that was why I thought, I want to start something. And then I had a dialogue with my co-founders in Katapult Ocean, the guys who had already started the Katapult group, and just discussing with them the idea of impact investing and support working with really early stage companies and founders got me really engaged. And then, so it's really, you have to have passionate about it, right? About the type of people you would work with the kind of the style, working fast-paced environment with a lot of people. And then the ocean is a passion of mine. Being from Norway, I think we grow up with a kind of a very strong relationship with the ocean. We have one of the longest coastlines in the world. We have some of the leading players in all ocean sectors. I think we take kind of the closeness we have to the ocean, the relationship to the ocean, almost a bit for granted. So I saw a great, it's the passion for the ocean. And then I saw the great market opportunity here. There was really a gap in the market. A lot of clever people starting ventures in the ocean space, but not many smart investors in this space at the very early stage. And that's what we built with Katapult Ocean. We saw a huge market opportunity. We saw a gap. We saw really an opportunity for us to support and help ambitious founders at the same time as investing in them and generating good financial returns for our investors. So the market opportunity, passion about the subject, and really the opportunity to work with great people. And that is what has also led me to start Fynd, which I'm currently doing, is that I also see a gap in the market for later stage investors in more the growth phase of the same type of companies.
Mm-hmm. And so when you are, so you were part of the Katapult group at the time, you see this market opportunity, your passion for the ocean, you decide to start Katapult Ocean. How does it work? You said you were 3 co-founders. So how do you select the one you already mentioned? How do you find the other one? How do you select him? And then the second part would be, how do you start raising funding? Because I guess, it's not like a startup. You cannot bootstrap it. You need, if you want to invest in other startups. So what are your steps there to say, okay, we're going to find investors to raise some capital before we are even able to start?
So first topic, people, team. When I started Katapult Ocean, it was kind of, we're 4 co-founders, and all of us kind of decided to start it together. So the 3 others were part of Katapult. I came from the outside, so my company and them started Katapult Ocean together. So we kind of, all of us kind of chose each other when we started Katapult Ocean.
And Katapult, just to be sure, Katapult is also an investment company.
Yes. And then the most important thing for me then was actually to find, who's going to be in my team, who's going to be in my management group, who's going to build Katapult Ocean from scratch with me. The other co-founders had kind of a more, some of them are more active than others, but more passive, not the day-to-day role. So my most important thing here was to find the right people to sit together with me day and night to build Katapult Ocean. And first thing I did was to really to use my network. I knew I wanted to have people based, the main part of the team in Norway. But I started talking to people in my network, get them engaged. You have to really share the vision, talk about the story, and get them on board. And I was extremely lucky to get 4 fantastic people to join me. That really we ended up being a team that really complemented each other. So that is kind of the most important thing, and that's what I'm currently doing with Fynd as well. How to build the right team from the very beginning. If you fail to do that, I guess that it's if you start an investment company like I've done with Katapult Ocean and with Fynd, it's exactly the same as if you start a startup, kind of more traditional startup as well. So it's people who share the same passion, the same values, and are really ready to give everything to deliver on the mission. And then you need funding, of course, to both to get those people on board and to start the work. So for when you set up an investment firm, you need both funding to kind of set up that company and hire people, and then you also, of course, the both part here is to get capital into a fund that you then manage and invest into other companies, right? And this goes a bit in parallel. So with Katapult Ocean, we had some initial funding from the Katapult group, which so we managed to get it started, and then we got another investor on board into the management company. But then the very first things we did in parallel was to start talking to investors to get them excited about the opportunity to invest into the Katapult Ocean Fund. And as it is with fundraising for a startup, this is kind of the same with fundraising for a fund. You have to tell a convincing story. Why should those investors put capital into your project instead of having it in the bank or having it in other funds? There are a lot of people asking for the capital. Why should they put it into you? And telling that story in a convincing way, make sure you talk to the right people, and really be focused on what type of investors you talk to is critical.
So now that you have you find the way to raise the funding, you found your co-founder. What in that part at the beginning? What was the hardest part?
I think it's in general it is just to remain focused. Because in the very beginning, setting up a company, you are there are so many things that needs to be done, and there are so many work streams, and you're just too few people to be really true to your mission and not be tempted to say yes to contribute to a lot of other things, but really, really stay true to your focus. What are the most important things you need to do, get done over the next month? Just focus on that. Just as an example, also, it's a parallel thing. I was in a board meeting yesterday with the company I've invested in privately, and that was the main focus in that board meeting yesterday. Also, was to support those founders on focusing. What's the key thing we need to achieve next month? Is it to get one cornerstone investor, or is it to get that product ready? Okay, that's the most important thing. Then everyone should focus on that. We shouldn't do anything else apart from kind of keeping everything else floating. And that's tough, right? Because you have to say no to stuff. And a lot of founders are extremely ambitious and passionate and are yes people. So I think that is a challenge, and still a challenge currently. While I'm still kind of building Fynd with, I have a great group of people joining me, but not all of them have joined full time yet. So I'm still kind of, it's extremely important to be focused and say no.
Do you have any tip on your decision making process to be able to stay focused?
A very concrete one is to use a tool that I use just for myself, and I've used it as a management tool in Katapult Ocean, and I've also a lot of the companies we invested in Katapult Ocean have also started using it. I think it comes from Cisco. It's the OKR, Objective Key Results. It's a very, it's a very simple tool, but it helps you focus. So, okay, what are the main objectives you have, you want to achieve the next 3 months? Max, for a company, small company, maximum 4, 5, maximum, right? For a company with 2 persons, maybe 2. And then for each of those objectives, what are the key results, measurable, and what's the deadline, and who is responsible? It sounds very simple, but if you put all of that down on paper and you stick it up on the wall to remind yourself this is a focus, every time you're asked to do something else, or there's something else that grabs your attention, look at that. And we had a rule in Katapult Ocean, which was that if we do not, if there's anything else than what's on that OKR that comes on our desk, we're not going to do it. And if we feel that this is something we should do, then we have to sit down, all of us, and say, okay, then we have to remove something else that is on the OKR, because we don't have the capacity to focus on more. So we're very strict on that. So it's a good tool.
Yeah, OKRs are very, very powerful. And it takes the bigger the company is, the more time it takes to set them up and probably to follow them up. But I also agree that it's something very, very efficient. And I think companies who are using it are way more efficient than others. So after talking about this hardest part in the beginning, when I see on your website that it says you invest and support startups with a positive impact on our ocean, and you basically have 3 steps to help them to invest, to catalyze those 2 words. And you have the Katapult accelerator, and you are as well, building a global ecosystem with startups, mentors, partners, investors. How do you decide to develop these different services, or let's say features of your company, in which order?
I was lucky when starting Katapult Ocean, because we had a sister company, or have in Katapult Ocean, called Katapult Accelerator, and they had already established an accelerator program and seed fund for impact startups globally. So they had already tested a lot of things and had kind of this model where they had a fund, they invested, they supported, and built an ecosystem. So what we did with Katapult Ocean is that we saw, okay, that works for these types of startups. What do we need to do to build, to be the most relevant early stage investor for ocean impact startups? And these startups are quite different, because it's more hardware involved. It's more nascent part of the startup ecosystem. It's more research. It's kind of different types of founders as well. I'd say it's quite experienced founders in that space also. With in our portfolio in Katapult Ocean, the average age has been closer to 40 years old. So experienced business people or researchers. What do these people need? So it was really all about, as a normal startup, again, we had the starting point, which was Katapult Accelerator. Then I started talking to founders in the ocean space. What do they need? What type of support would they need? What are the challenges they're kind of struggling with? What type of people would they like to brainstorm those challenges with? What type of, So it's really to understand your customers' needs, and as an accelerator and fund, the customers are, you have a couple of customers. You have the startups on the one side that needs to buy into you, and then you have the investors. So what we did was really start talking to all these stakeholders to understand what their needs were, so that we can tailor make a product offering, which is the investment and the accelerator program, to those.
Okay, and I saw as well that you have a lot of partners on your website, and to build this ecosystem of partners, what are exactly these partners, and how did you grow that network? What's your approach for that?
Those partners had different roles. So some were supporting us when we had the demo days or events, and took part in those in different shapes and forms. Others contributed to our due diligence process. Others again had people in their companies contributing as mentors. Others again contributed to the accelerator program, hosting sessions, talking, for example, about what they see, what they look for when they decide to do a pilot project with a startup, for example, or shared how they work with impact and impact measurement, or how they work with leadership development, because really supporting these founders to become good leaders is also a very important part of what we need to do. So these partners have different types of roles, and some of them are also clusters that have access to a lot of interesting startups. So it can also be sharing insights about startups, trends in technologies, and so on. So different roles, but building those, building that ecosystem is something that I have worked a lot on, and that's really a lot of it is also kind of personal network that I, also when I'm building Fynd, having all these kind of relationships with people in this space globally is really an advantage. And how to build that? Well, it's about being present. I mean, in these Corona times, it's a bit different actually, because you have, it's a lot of conferences still. It's all virtual, but you miss those more informal chats by the coffee machine, right? Or in between the sessions. But I've been present globally at most important ocean events. I've also been, both as a speaker and panelist, but also really just there as a listener, talking to people, visited different ocean hubs, and really talked to a lot of stakeholders. And then it's about developing good relationships where you support and give something back, right? So it becomes a mutual beneficial relationship. So that's the balance, right? It's between saying no to a lot of things and saying yes, because when you say yes, you get exposure to a lot of interesting people that might be very interesting to talk to, and that, and then you might end up, learning something new, discover a new company, a new technology, which is valuable for building the companies. But you have to strike the right balance there. But if you say that, building these type of networks or ecosystems is key to succeed in what you're doing, then of course that should be part of what you do. And then you have to prioritize down something else.
And regarding these decisions to be able to say yes or no, again, here, do you have a certain decision-making process to try to evaluate when you should say yes or when you should say no?
It goes back to having that OKR to have a look at that. Does it support any of those objectives? Yes or no? And if it does, then it's worthwhile, considering to actually say yes to those. But at the same time, you have to. It's a lot about gut feeling. It's a lot about, maybe not, you can say yes to something, but then maybe say, yes, I'm available, but, in 2 weeks time from now or something. So it's all about time management, really, to have a combination of all those meetings and network building, with also having enough time to sit down and think and reflect and do more of the deep thinking
I think that's actually a really good tip, to be able to, if you have the OKRs all the time in front of you and you follow your gut feelings, combination should give you probably the best answer. When you talked about the virtual event and the fact that you're lacking this like informal chats, do you have actually there any special tips, or have you found out some ways to actually compensate for this lack of contact?
I think it's about also, since you don't get to have that 10-minute chat with the person you want to talk to by the coffee machine, that you can just target, be more just approach people via emails or call them, or be more use other tools to get to talk to those people, call people and ask ask for a quick chat. And I think what the good thing about things being virtual is that you can actually have a 15, or it's easier to have a 10 or 15-minute chat with someone virtually than in person, right? So as an example, a couple of days ago, I had someone had asked me to take a coffee, and because we still meet people for coffees here in Oslo, in Norway, with the arms, or with the 1 meter social distance. I decided to do that via phone or a whereby instead. And in that discussion, I just quite early figured out this wasn't that relevant for me at the moment. So, we ended that discussion after 10 minutes in a nice way. And I said, it might be relevant for us to touch base again over Christmas at some point. If I'd, met that person for coffee in a physical place, it would have, taken at least an hour, right, to get there to, and you can't really end something after 10 minutes then. So there are some advantages as well with that.
Yes, yeah, and that's actually one thing I realized as well. When you have meetings with someone, I attended before as well, to say, oh yeah, let's meet up for coffee or for lunch, and then you now attend more as well to say, let's have first a phone chat, and because not very often, but sometimes you just realize that it's not the right time to discuss, or there is nowhere to go, and it's better to postpone and to just have this 5-minute chat instead of like having to talk during 1 hour, even though it's nice. But if you start doing that too often, as you said, saying too often yes, then you start ending up not doing enough, not accomplishing enough.
Exactly.
So, that's a pros of the virtual thing. It makes it easier now. You would not have said to someone like, oh, let's take a coffee over Skype like a year ago.
Exactly. But the thing is that of course it might be more challenging to get hold of those people you want to talk with, right? Because it's easier if they're in a physical meeting and you can approach someone physically and say, hi, Eric,
They have to talk to you in that case.
Exactly, right? But they don't have to reply to your email or your phone calls. That's, of course, then it's about being convincing again, right? In the
the first minute is also very crucial. It's like cold calling, but in chats.
Yes.
I'd like to switch to move to this do's and don'ts you sent me, and then I'd love to talk, of course, about your future. So I'll ask you if you could put up a list of do's and don'ts for the founders who are actually raising some funding. So you told me for that, the first one was to be honest and transparent, show the ugly side. What do you need support and help with, and ask for it. This makes investors engage. So Can you elaborate on that?
Well, yes, it's, when you're fundraising for a startup, now I'm talking about really early stage type of startups that we have invested in with Katapult Ocean. Of course, you want to show the best, and you want to sell, your company and the team and all of that. And that's great. You should definitely do that. But you have to be, at the same time, be honest and transparent, because no one expects that a small early stage company is perfect. So that looks almost too suspicious, right? And kind of, so I think it's good to also be very open about what you need support on, because, and if those areas matches what these investors can support you on, then it's really, that's very interesting for the investors, because they say that they see that, wow, this is, here I can really contribute and I can add value, and that's exciting for an investor in the early stage. So it's about just building that trust also between the investors and the startups, really, to have an open dialogue, to sit down and just be transparent, and because all those kind of flaws or things that doesn't work are going to be figured out anyway in the due diligence process or later on. So it's much better to kind of upfront be honest about it, but then of course in a clever way. So that's the first thing. Yes.
So the second one was to surround yourself with people that complement you in the board and team, and hire people that are better than you.
Yes, that's back to my kind of what I talked about the first things I did when starting Katapult Ocean, and also now while starting Fynd, is make sure you have the right people, and that you build a diverse team in many aspects, really. So it's not all about gender and ethnicity and all of that. It's backgrounds, interest, introvert, extrovert. It's kind of way of working. It's a lot, all the dimensions. That's really what can add a lot of value. And as an investor, that's what I'm looking for. A team that really strength, together is extremely strong because of the complementary sides. And if you, but as an early startup, you don't have that many people, right? So then it's even more important to make sure that you can have people in the board, or if you have an advisory board or a mentor that can really support you on the topics that you're not that good at, right? And very often we see that people tend to hire people that are similar to themselves. That's kind of a bias we typically have. And I think it's very important to be cautious of that and really try to hire people that are different and people that are better than you at something, because then you can kind of improve or strengthen the company as a whole. And it's exciting to work with people, smart people that are better than you, that you can learn from, right? That's really what, at least what excites me.
The third do you send me is do your research, identify the investors that are relevant for you. Do not waste your time meeting investors with the wrong mandate. Make the pitch relevant to them and what's in for them in addition to financial returns. I'm really curious about that one.
It's a bit back to the say no and prioritize, right? So you're a startup and you want to raise funding. It's very tempting to talk to, of course you should talk to a lot of people about it, but it's tempting to just get all the meetings you can. But I think it's so important to do your homework, find out what investors have previously invested in companies at your stage or have that as part of their mandate. Really prepare yourself so that when you go and meet that investor, you can pitch to them, not to kind of any investor, but you actually make a pitch to them. I'm not talking about making a completely new pitch every time you're having an investor presentation, but you can just do small tweaks and include stuff so it makes it personal for them, and so that they see that, oh, this is somewhere where I can actually add value, and it makes sense for my fund or my company to invest into this. And these guys have actually made an effort to understand us and to learn about us. That's also a nice thing for those investors. So, and it's also about not wait, same reason as not saying yes to everything. Just do not waste the investor's time nor your startup's precious time meeting people that are not relevant for you. And there are different ways of doing that, of course. I mean, one thing is, of course, starts with Googling and researching the web sites and so on, but also, talk to people in the ecosystem, try to understand which investors are most inclined to invest in you, and start with those. Have a prioritized list.
And what do you mean by what's in them in addition to financial returns? I mean, what would be the things you would look at directly?
Yeah, I can take an example, which is, again, I think it's true for both Katapult Ocean and Fynd, is that investors that invested into our fund, they get access to our ecosystem. They can learn something. They can follow what are the latest trends within the aquaculture sector, for example, or what's the latest technology, or what's happening in this space in Canada or elsewhere in the world. So, and they can maybe be part of a group of really interesting investors that have more experience in the growth phase, or investors that have more experience in ocean. Make sure that these investors see that, yes, you invested, you have, there's going to be financial returns here, but you can also, this can be part of building your ecosystem. You can gain more insights and knowledge by becoming part of this ecosystem. You can learn something.
And arriving to the last, do you sent me, you said say no to a lot of things, prioritize not only in fundraising but in life in general. I guess you already mentioned that a couple of times, so I think it's kind of a mantra for you, but do you have anything you want to add on this?
It's actually not the thing is that it's not been a mantra for me, so that's maybe why I emphasize it a lot. It sounds like I'm a no person, but I'm actually more of a yes person, which is why I have to which is why I really have to focus on this, right? Because I get
you have
tempted.
A big sign with no in front of you.
Yeah, I don't, right? But I should probably. So I say yes to a lot of things because I get excited, and of course, if you have the capacity to kind of do all the stuff, yes. I become much more stricter prioritizing, especially after I became a mom as well, and kind of you have to pick up a kindergarten, and you have to you have more. Limits to there's more stuff you have to do in addition, which is more important than work as well. I think just that automatically made me prioritize more and be very strict, but I've always actually been quite strict in prioritizing, but I'm not always comfortable saying no.
It's something to learn and something, but I also really get you in a way that, like, I think all the good networkers, and I think you seem to be very good at partnership as well, and it's something when you're a good networker in general, you're also very good at saying yes, and so but it's about being aware of sometimes your flaws, and I guess that's part of it. And I'm basically the same type as well. And as you said, sometimes it's when you start to realize that you don't have enough time for something else, then you need to be able to start to say no. And you said being a mom, like, congratulations on that as well. I mean, I know the feeling recently, and when you start having a baby, then all of a sudden the hours you get for yourself or for work are just limited, so you try to maximize your efficiency.
Yes, and I think you become more efficient actually, and more focused. That's my experience.
So thank you very much for these tips and recommendations, these do's and don'ts. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about your future, and I know that you left as a CEO, Katapult Ocean. You're still an advisor, a strategic advisor, I think. And I'd like to talk a bit about your future plans. But before we dive too quickly into that, there's one thing that I find very interesting that I'd like to talk with you. It's to talk about how you proceeded to give over your company in the best way possible. Because I think, when you are a co-founder, when you create a company, this becomes your baby, I guess.
Yes.
And so the first question would be, what makes you take that decision at some point, if you might mention it or explain it, and then how do you proceed to find the person who replaces you, or the persons who replace you?
No, as you said, it's exactly the same words I've used a lot of times. That it becomes a kind of a baby, a second baby. And it's more emotional than quitting or ending other jobs, right? It's very different because you built something and put so much into it and built a team and all of that. For me, it was really the result of a long thought process where I had seen that there are other gaps that needs to be filled to build a sustainable ocean economy, which is really my passion right now. And I thought, how can I contribute to that? I want to continue to play a role in that. And we were at the stage with Katapult Ocean where we built a solid foundation, had a great team. And I thought that, this is a stage where where we can actually find someone else who can take this forward. And I can go out and start something from scratch again, which is what I'm doing at Fynd. And Katapult Ocean, I started together with 3 co-founders and an established system. But I want also to start something completely from scratch, which is what I'm doing currently with Fynd.
So was the CEO already part of your team before?
No, but he was part of the Katapult ecosystem. So he already knew my team. He knew the owners, all of that. So it was, and we knew each other. We've known each other for a long time as well, like privately. So it was a quite efficient process actually, and he already knew Katapult Ocean, our values and our mission and vision very well. Which was a lucky situation.
So you left Katapult. You didn't really left because you're still an advisor there, but you left as a CEO in spring this year. And so your next step, you already mentioned it, was Fynd. Can you explain me a bit what are the next steps with that venture, and what kind of co-founders are you looking for? What do you think is going to be the most difficult in the coming months?
Yes. So first priority was to, of course, have a smooth transition with Katapult Ocean, make sure that the new CEO, Jonas, got on board in a good way, and all that. And then I'm currently now building Fynd Ocean Ventures. And our ambition is to be the leading fund manager for the sustainable ocean economy globally for companies in the growth phase. So that is significantly later than Katapult Ocean invests in, and we want to invest in a fewer number of companies, be hands-on in the entire investment period. And we put together, and to do that, we are also system thinkers. So we look at kind of what's needed to build a sustainable economy. We're based in Norway also, and with the global, connected to the global scene. So we look for companies globally, we look for investors globally, and we have also the strong purpose, mission focus here. We want to provide competitive financial returns with impact. And to deliver on such an approach, what type of people do we need, right? So the first thing I did here again was to think about, okay, who's the perfect co-founder for me here? So I started several discussions, and I ended up with a fantastic guy who's going to be who's joining me. He is currently a partner with the Boston Consulting Group. So he has a great track record from creating value for companies, big and small companies. He's also been an active venture capital investor himself. And we've known each other for several decades, actually. So that was a fantastic moment when he said yes to join. So we are two co-founders, and around us we're also building a kind of the same approach, actually, both an advisory network, and also the board with really seasoned investors in this space with track record from leading private equity funds and impact investments, and also with strong experience from the sectors we look at. So I'm trying to do the same thing as I advise my companies I invested in to build a complementary team here that can really deliver on the mission. So the team, is kind of forming now. We're also in dialogue with investors, where we again look for the right investors for us to get us cornerstone investors, kind of the first big investors that we get on board. We look for Norwegian family offices or institutional investors, and we want those Norwegian investors typically have an experience from investing into the ocean space, and combining that with international investors with more experience from the growth phase. And then we build a pipeline and talk to companies. So it's a lot of work streams. I have my OKR that I look at every day to focus and say no and say yes to a lot of things as well. But it's exciting, and it's having a co-founder that's very value aligned is so important. And I think both of us want to build a fund management system here that does venture capital in maybe a bit different way. Think more diverse about the type of people we bring into the team, how we work, and try to establish a different culture. There are always exceptions, but here in Norway and elsewhere, it's historically the venture capital space has been quite, and also the PE space has been. It's quite a kind of macho. You work like crazy hours, and it's very competitive. It's I'm just generalizing here, but it's something about some of the cultures that exist in this space that we want to challenge and do things in a different way, which resonates with our impact focus as well, right? So we think there are even better ways of doing this.
How do you make sure, when you talk about impact for the early stage startup, and especially when you're going to go into more in the VC world here, or in the growth stage, when these companies are usually aiming at an exit, for example, are being bought by these giant corporates who sometimes are more into the greenwashing part without really caring about the impact. How do you make sure you actually can avoid that or make it the right way?
When it comes to investors, I think if people invest into Fynd, the fund, because they want to show they're doing something sustainable, I think I'm fine with that, because we manage the fund and we know that our intentionality is right. I think that's fine. The companies we invest in, we focus on impact. We together with our partners, we assess what is the actual ocean impact on this specific technology or solution. Does it actually have a positive impact? So this is really part of our strategic due diligence process, and we have a framework that we use to do this. And we focus a lot on the founding team's intentionality here as well, to make sure that these they're doing this for the right reasons. And then when it comes to potential exit opportunities for these companies, as you mentioned, strategic players who want to kind of buy some of our portfolio companies in the end. As long as we know that the intentionality of those teams and the technology and the solutions are good for the ocean, it's great that these companies are acquired by bigger players as a way for them to move on this sustainability journey. I think it's in Fynd we look at kind of three main areas. One is to feed the planet in a healthy, sustainable way. Second is improved utilization of ocean resources, so that is new materials, health nutraceuticals, and so on. And the last one is technology to support fact-based informed decision making, which is big data, sensors, connectivity, all of that. And I think as long as we do a thorough assessment in our due diligence process, I think we are fine. But of course, it's important that we are very cautious about what type of investors we want to sell these companies to make sure that the impact focus is continued in the next phase of those companies' growth.
Good that they keep on having the right mission.
Yeah, and we as investors, we work with these companies on impact, how to define their theory of change, what impact metrics should they report on. So these companies, they report back to us on financial results, but also impact. And we aggregate that and report to our investors on both the financial developments, but also impacts. And this is becoming more and more, normalized as well, which is great to see.
Thank you, Maren. I would love to move to the last usual questions that I ask all my guests. So the first one would be, what's the best advice you've been given as an entrepreneur?
Ask for help and support. Just reach out to people and ask for people to mentor you or to give advice and support. Because people love to help. I think that's important.
Great one. what's your favorite question to ask candidates during your recruiting process? Or let's say here, that's usually what I ask to startup owners, but in your case, maybe it's not during the recruiting process as such as a candidate, but as a startup, but to the founders, for example.
Why do you want to work here? I want to see if they're passionate, if they, it's a broad question, right? But why do you want to work with me? Why do you want to work with Fynd? Why do you want to work with Katapult Ocean? To be able to see if they're really passionate about it and if they're thought through, what they can contribute with.
And when you ask that question, how do you evaluate, the honesty of the answer?
This is, again, all of these type of processes are better to do in person. I guess it's a matter of, I have a gut feeling, an instinct. I've talked to, talked to and interviewed so many founders and people and in different situations. So I think that if you have a long discussion and a couple of interviews or discussions with these, potential candidates, you get you understand if they talk the truth or not. And that is, of course, important to do reference checks and all of that. But I believe in, not having this, very hardcore interviews, but have more of a dialogue. And this is especially for a new company like Fynd and Katapult Ocean was, it's kind of you have to sell both ways, right? It's different than when I interviewed for McKinsey, because there was a kind of different balance and strength there. I think you have to create this good dialogue, and then you get a feeling if people are honest or not. But
yes, and I agree. Yeah, I agree as well, and especially when you have several questions. I think that question is a very good one. But what you said is totally right. It's when you look at what the people say beside that question that you actually can evaluate how passionate these people are. Because I don't know if you have examples, but I can really have some examples in mind when I was working in the music industry and I was interviewing in the tech. For a musician for this tech company, all the people would tell you, yeah, I'm passionate about music. Why do you want to work here? But at the end of the day, you would have some people along the interview process who would tell you, when I read the ad, I had butterflies in my stomach. This is my dream job. I would quit my job tomorrow directly if I could have a spot here. So by just speaking with these people, even if you ask that question in the middle of it, of the interview, you have cues at other places on when these people are really passionate.
Yeah.
But I think it's a very important question to answer.
Yeah, and that is, of course, for the different types of roles that I look for. If I look for track record within investment, those are all the kind of the data. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be there. But you have, in addition to those, you have to have that passion and really want to work with. It's so important when you're a small company. If you're big established industry players and you add one more person, that's of course important. But for a small company that you're two people and you're adding one more person, it's extremely important that person is a good match, right? Personally as well, and can complement. And
that's a measure of success. Yeah. Which book would you recommend entrepreneurs in the ocean world, for example, or in the sustainability with a sustainable mission to read? Or investors, you can also take the example of investors. If you have a very, I'm sure, this podcast is mostly listened to by entrepreneurs, but I'm sure more and more investors, I hope, will start to listen to it. So what would be the book for the entrepreneurs or the book for the investors?
Good question. No, I try as much as possible to read more articles in HBR and McKinsey Quarterly and all of that, and kind of keep it to articles. And then when I read books, I normally read. I don't read work-related stuff really. I try to kind of have the more professional stuff to read articles instead, and keep it kind of shorter to get over more than to read books. So I actually recommend when you sit down and read a book, for me, the most important thing is to read something completely different. But that can.
So, what's the last non-business related book that you've read that is good that you would recommend?
It's actually, it's funny. It's actually a book written by my aunt, who is one of the most famous authors in Norway. Really?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So is it available in English?
Yeah, it probably is going to be. She's had several, most of her books have also been translated.
What is either the training or the podcast, the blog, or the influencer you would recommend entrepreneurs and people with a sustainable mission to follow?
I'm very much in the ocean space, right? And I think some examples of people. I think Nina Jensen is a good one. She's a Norwegian marine biologist. She's head of REV, which is a big research vessel and a big project in Norway or globally, really, with ocean and conservation technology startups. So I think Rev Ocean and Nina Jensen is someone. Christian Teleki as well, who is the head of the world. Head of Ocean at the World Resource Institute and also head of Friends of Ocean Action. He's also a friend of mine. He posts a lot of interesting things on Twitter with regards to new research. Friends of Ocean Action, again, it's not a person, but it's a group. I think the Ocean Panel, a lot of those players that, it's useful to follow in the ocean space and see what's new of research.
Thank you very much for all these tips. I'm really glad and thankful that you took the time to actually say yes in the middle of your OKRs, and we made it through for this podcast interview, Maren. So thank you very much again for sharing your experience, and wishing you all the best with your new company, Fynd. Is Fynd already online?
It's next week, so I'll share it with you when it's ready.
Okay, thank you very much again for your time. Have a wonderful day, and all the best.
Thank you, Gabe.
If you like this podcast, there are 2 things you can do that would mean the world to me. The first thing is to sign up for the podcast newsletter. That way you will be notified of the new episodes, but you will also get a summary of the learnings at the end of every season. Plus, for each episode, you will get the resources and the list of do's and don'ts that every guest shares with me. And finally, you will also get the opportunity to ask our future guests one question in advance. You can sign up for this newsletter on gtimpact.com. The second thing you can do to be super helpful is to recommend this podcast. For that, you can write a review on Apple Podcasts and share the podcast with your friends, other entrepreneurs, and people trying to build a sustainable future. That way, we can all learn together and work on a brighter future for us, our children, and our planet. Thank you very much, and see you next week for the next episode. Have a nice day.